The problem with the progressive wing of Protestantism is it actually ends up being so intertwined with the culture that it ends up actually not having anything to say that the culture itself is not already set.
I'm here with Andy Crouch, who's a partner for theology and culture at Praxis, well-known and beloved author and speaker, well-known and beloved by me, at the very least.
by one podcast host.
It just takes one reader with books including The Life We're Looking For, Tech-Wise Family, as well as Culture Making, Recovering Our Creative Calling, which we'll be discussing today. Also the recent recipient just yesterday of the Richard J. Foster Award in Spiritual Formation. Congratulations here at George Fox University. We're so honored to give that to you. It's an award that recognizes those whose intellectual and practical work helps others come into an ongoing transformational relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's what we're going to talk about and more. Andy, thank you so much for being here.
It is a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. I thought, as just a fun concept for this talk, if you're game, we can talk about the recent re-release, 2023. Where's the camera? I'm holding it up. The people who are listening are like, what are you doing right now? Culture Making, Recovering Our Creative Calling. You first wrote this in 2008, right?
Came out in 2008.
Came out in 2008. You were probably writing it in 2005.
Wrote it for years.
Yeah, that's something people might not understand about books is like the year it comes out is not the year that you wrote it. Right. But they did a paperback re-release, I think, in 2013 or something like that. And then this re-release with a new afterword and probably some other spruce up kind of stuff in 2023. So I thought it might be fun to just celebrate the book and talk about what has happened between 2008 and now. Maybe not that many things.
Quick conversation.
A quick conversation. I wondered if you could start just to set the table for us, for those who maybe haven't read the book, about how you define culture. When I reread your book just recently, I was stunned by how expansive. It was almost breathtaking. It was kind of liberating in a way, but even confusing about how expansive the definition was. I thought, because I think about culture and immediately I just do like anybody. I think like, oh, music and paintings and stuff.
Yes.
I got the sense that you're talking about something a little bit more than that. I wonder if you could talk about what you mean by culture.
Absolutely. Well, the same was true decades ago, that when you said culture, people thought high culture, like art museums, what culture do people do, the symphony maybe, or people thought kind of the arts and entertainment more broadly by popular culture. But I had been reading and really influenced by the cultural sociologists, the people who, I mean, all of sociology and anthropology, the two disciplines that kind of really systematically think about culture. Right. But there was this sub-discipline of sociology. And these people like Peter Berger, probably the greatest influence on me, but many others, were really looking at kind of the deeper and broader meaning of the word and the ways that all these other things that we don't think about when we first hear the word culture actually are very much part of shaping who we are and expressing who we are as human beings. And so I was reading all these academics. I'm not an academic. There's one Dr. Crouch in our house, and it's not me. It's my wife.
Who's a professor of physics.
A professor of physics.
That's some heady stuff.
Yes, it is. Catherine's very good at mathematics and many other things that I am not very good at. But I do try to think seriously. At the same time, I really want my thinking to land back in the world in a way that not all academics, that's not what they need to have happen. Right. And so you'd read, sociology textbooks, and you'd come to the author's definition of culture, and it would be like a paragraph long. Right. There's an amazing sociologist named Christian Smith who has this incredible definition of a person that I have been trying to memorize recently.
Christian Smith of Notre Dame.
Of Notre Dame, yep. And I can't do it yet. It'll take me another couple months to memorize.
The performance is not ready to do here. Okay.
So, very comprehensive, very thorough, very thoughtful definitions, but unmemorable, unmemorizable for most of us. So there's a journalist named Ken Myers who came up with a distillation of the academic definition that I actually think is a beautiful example of what in technology we call non-lossy compression. That is, how do you compress something into a short amount of time and yet not lose kind of at least the essence of it?
I like that.
And his definition, which I use in Culture Making, is what human beings make of the world in both senses. That's all there is to it. Wow. What human beings make of the world.
Material and intellectual, I guess.
Yes, material and meaning, I often say. But yes, exactly. So what do you make of what Andy just said is a meaning question. What are you making of the world tends to sound more like a material question. And in fact, the beautiful thing about this definition is it captures something very fundamental about culture, which is all of the material we make has meaning. There is nothing we make as human beings when human beings are free to do what they want to do. Human beings can be forced to make things that don't have meaning, but they don't naturally and they don't readily. And all the meaning we make takes material forms. So, we have all sorts of useful things in the world. You and I are wearing clothing, for example, which is useful in multiple senses. And we could just wear a covering. I mean, for whatever, climate we're in and whatever degree of modesty we want and so forth.
Like a robe, like a wrap.
A robe.
I think we should, but continue.
Like a linen sackcloth or something. But in fact, we're wearing clothing with a long cultural tradition behind what each of us are wearing that goes way beyond utility.
Our clothing, by the way, looks like a chessboard, black and white.
That's true, black and white.
Is this symbolic of something? First? Are we supposed to get into some kind of like thing here?
And we're playing like Jessica's white moves first, and you did. You started the move, right?
I don't even know where I am anymore, Andy.
Okay. So yes.
Yes. Okay. Continue.
Anyway,
take me back out of this.
Well, see exactly. See how quickly you raise it, and then you can start talking about meaning embedded in something as sort of utilitarian as clothing.
Right.
So all the material we make has meaning, and in many ways, I think this is the deeper insight in Ken's definition. When human beings want to make sense of the world, they have to make stuff. We can't just think about it. We have to materialize our thinking. That's even true in what we're doing right now. We're creating a digital artifact right now of a podcast and a video form of that podcast. And in one sense, like that's purely digital. It's going to be recorded on digital chips and played through digital devices.
Right.
But the end goal of all that is to move sound waves that hit the ears and, in the case of the video, impinge on the retina of human beings, get translated into electrical impulses, but first move the world. Like the sound waves move, the electromagnetic frequencies are distorted off of normal, and what you get from that is signal that conveys meaning. So even something as fairly immaterial as a podcast still passes through the physical world and, of course, originates in our bodies, which are material, and the air we're literally breathing and moving with our voices. So even the most kind of abstract and intellectual conversation like we are right now having, and which are causing some people to think, I think I'll move on to another podcast right now.
We don't need them. We don't need them. We're just shaking off the casual people right now.
That's right. We're just
shaking them off. Okay.
It's always material. So, meaning and material, the way they go together, and the fact that all the material has meaning. Yeah. And then, one more layer of this, if we will, the trees of the garden, Genesis says, we're useful for food and a delight to the eyes.
Yes.
There is this just inherent human desire to have the world be both useful and beautiful. And there's actually an asymmetry there. We are happy to have some things that are beautiful without being useful, but we actually really dwindle, whatever the opposite of flourish is, when we're kind of surrounded by things that are only useful and not beautiful. We want our useful things to be beautiful as well. And I think that speaks to the fact that ultimately what culture is about is a kind of quest to reunite with what every human being at some point in their lives has intuited is a source of beauty, goodness, meaning, truth that we feel alienated from and cut off from, and yet also feel there must be a path back to. And we're all on that quest, and culture is just, in a way, the material record of this shared human project to find our way to the good and true and beautiful that we intuit is possible, though we find ourselves always alienated from it at the same time.
Oh, this is gorgeous, and I love it. It's the story of people in Genesis 1-3.
Yeah.
When I was a kid growing up, to the extent that I would have ever thought about Christian culture, which was not a very great extent, I guess I would have thought, and I felt like people around me, and these are in vaguely evangelical type circles in the United States, in the Midwest. I guess I would have felt like Christian culture, the question for Christians around culture was basically about, do we have our own movies and our own music?
Yes.
Like that's where it kind of came from, like growing up in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And it feels like now, and maybe I'm just not part of the right circles, and I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, and we certainly think about these things too, but is your sense that Christians, even since 2008, are thinking about culture differently in this more expansive, beautiful sense? Or like what's your sense of the state of the union of where Christians are at with thinking about culture versus this imagined moment I'm having, this remembered moment of being a kid and it was all about like, don't listen to secular music. We have our own culture. We have our own play, something we should dress differently.
Yes.
I don't see any of that really now. Christian, the idea that you dress differently. I mean, maybe there would be some Amish groups or some people who would still do that.
Yeah, very much
but
so.
most of us wouldn't. So I don't know if this is making any sense, but like,
I
don't know. Where has this gone?
That's a very interesting question. I would say I don't see a big difference of degree probably from 2008, but I do see perhaps a trend continuing, which is there was Christianity in America is a complicated story, and the culture associated with it very complicated.
Many different groups.
But at the turn of the 20th century, so the early 20th century, you have this real cataclysmic, very traumatic cultural realignment among Protestants who have been the dominant religious group in America since the founding. And what happens is one group really aligns itself pretty self-consciously with the modern world and decides that modernity is a story of progress that the church should be part of. And we can think of this as modernist Christianity. It's also, at the time, styled itself liberal Christianity.
Yeah, mainline, progressive Presbyterians and Lutherans.
So these are the sequence. So first it's modernist, then it's liberal. Then after the Second World War, it becomes identified with the mainline, which is actually a cultural, it's a real cultural thing. It's a train line that runs from Center City, Philadelphia, out to the western suburbs.
Oh, really? I was wondering where that word came from.
The main line is a train line.
Oh,
I live on another branch of the commuter rail that runs into Philadelphia in the Philadelphia suburbs, but I live on sorry, it's changed names several times. We keep changing the endpoint. It's now called the Wawa line, which I can't get into why it's called that.
Yeah,
but anyway,
that's a bad name.
The main line ran through these very prosperous suburbs that were really the first suburbs in America. Were built along the main line in Philadelphia, and they're some of the names even may sound familiar. St. David's, Bryn Mawr. They're these little, very, very exclusive enclaves where the elite of Philadelphia moved westward to have more space and build very gracious homes and so forth. And then their churches were there, right? And their churches and these people were very assimilated to and connected to the kind of central cultural project of post-war America. And they were the leaders of it. They were the WASP elite. So when people were casting about for a term to describe this stream of Christianity that really did see promise in the kind of modern project, they said, like the mainline Christians. And then it kind
I did not know that. I'm so happy right now. That's an amazing story.
So funny fact, I go to a mainline church in the strictest sense because the last stop on that line is the Paoli line, and the church where my children were baptized and where we still attend is called Church of the Good Samaritan. It's an Episcopal church in Paoli on the last stop.
You are on the literal main line.
The literal main line. And an Episcopal church, which was one of the historic denominations that get identified with this. Then later on, for various reasons, today, most people in that tradition probably are most likely to describe themselves as progressive. And actually, that also is very much in continuity with the very first idea of modern. Modern means of the moment, like the moment, something's happening in the moment that God's doing that we should join. There's a whole other story, which is another group of people who in the 19th century will be readily called evangelicals, who back then are the dominant group. Come to have a much more contested relationship with the direction of modern culture.
Right.
And they are evicted from the institutions that they built. This would be institutions like the Young Men's Christian Association, the YMCA, which has now shortened its name to the Y, the great universities that their parents and grandparents had built, like Princeton University maybe most famously, because one of the exiles from Princeton, J. Gresham Machen, writes a book called Fundamentalism and Liberalism or something like that. And this group of exiles, cultural exiles, who are kind of kicked out of those institutions, actually then tell a story of why it's good they were kicked out, because modernity's going in the wrong direction, and we're now going to be separate. They become to be identified for a while as fundamentalists. After the war, some of their children and eventually grandchildren are like, we've overreacted. We're too distant from culture. So let's call ourselves evangelicals again. They pick up the name for the 19th century. They start calling themselves that again. And this is where a very interesting thing happens. And this is the narration that I give in culture making. So the fundamentalists condemn culture, the broad stream, the kind of mainstream, the influential stream, the stream that it kind of is all coherent with elite power, with wealth, and with political power in the United States. They're like, we're out. We were kicked out, and frankly, we don't want to go back. We'll happily let the door shut behind us.
Right.
their children start to think this has created a very narrow, and fundamentalism, it was all about what you didn't do. And
absolutely.
And so it wasn't that you didn't have your own movies. You didn't watch movies of any kind because movies are just of the world.
Right.
And you're trying to be separate from the world. Their children who start to call themselves evangelicals say, no, we should at least watch Norwegian movies in black and white that ask these deep existential questions. Because it turns out the world of jazz, the world of serious film, the world of modern art, which the fundamentalists would never have entertained, it's actually asking the very religious questions that we have come to believe Christianity has a really compelling response to. And so they start to do something I call critiquing culture, which is, kind of analyzing it, interacting with it, but not yet creating it. Then what happens, and I think this is where the story maybe picks up with what you were sensing, is...
You're analyzing right up to my life here. This is great. This is great.
Yeah, this is the story a lot.
I'm locating myself in this story. I think a lot of listeners could. It's a complex story, but I think we can locate ourselves in this story. Absolutely.
I think so. I myself was raised in the mainline tradition. But I came to a kind of faith, kind of a roundabout way that is different from the mainline tradition now. But my history wasn't this history. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, and for institutions like George Fox, this is very implicated.
Right.
So then there comes this idea, actually we should have movies. It's just that we should make sure they have Christian content so that they're wholesome and edifying, right?
Right.
This is when we start to create Christian-sourced cultural goods, especially in the entertainment media, that kind of thing, music. Mm-hmm. And for a while, the form is pretty much exactly what the dominant culture is doing. It's just that the lyrics are different.
Yep.
So... rock music is happening.
Now you're speaking my language.
Okay.
Now the memories are coming.
Yes, we can have rock music. It's just it'll be Christian rock music.
Right.
What happens? So this is in the 60s and 70s. This really starts to take off. Mm-hmm. But then something economic happens, which is it turns out that a subculture is a really good market. So subcultures, and there are lots of subcultures. Evangelical Christianity is not the only one. Subcultures are great markets because you can target them really clearly. Who's this for? It's for people like you. And if you buy and consume this product, you are kind of identifying with your tribe.
Right.
And then what starts to happen is commercial interests come in and they're like, wow, there's actually a lot of money in this subculture. And this is the big shift where it's actually becomes less and less about the content and more about the target demographic being marketed to.
We know who you are. We know what you like. We can build what you like.
Yeah. Yeah. And for a while, there's a very robust parallel industry that serves a kind of Christian market. But it doesn't touch the broader market. And that tends to mean that the pressures to be innovative and excellence are less. Generally in subcultures, the kind of pressure to be innovative and excellence, you don't have the same market pressures in the broader market.
I see where this is going.
To bring it up to today, what's changing? I think you can tell it through the story of a father and a son in a pretty interesting way. Mm. So the father is a guy named Jerry Jenkins. He's raised in late fundamentalism, early evangelicalism. He would be now in his late 70s, I would guess. Okay. If Jerry's listening, I hope he doesn't mind if I get his age a little wrong.
Hi, Jerry.
So among other things, he writes and becomes a very wealthy writer by writing a series called Left Behind that's based on a set of fundamentalist end times convictions and plays them out in fictional form, in a very popular fictional form.
Absolutely.
That's and I think Jerry, I know Jerry and appreciate him, and he's been very kind to me. I think he would agree, that was, for all it was a bestseller, it was a deeply, deeply subcultural thing. Mm-hmm. And if I can just try to be fair, not great art, perhaps.
Not high art.
Not high art, okay?
It's not on the Booker short list.
Sort of genre fiction,
yeah.
Okay. His son, Dallas, is a filmmaker who is raised by Jerry, and Dallas has this fire in his bones from very early in his life. So Dallas would be maybe a little younger than me. I'm in my 50s. Dallas probably in his late 40s now. And Dallas's vision is Dad, you wrote really best-selling books, but I want to make film, which is hard to make them books. Mm. I want to make it really well. I want it to be artistically serious. Mm-hmm. And he goes off to Hollywood to try to make films and has a bunch of tough experiences like most people do in Hollywood. And then about 5 years ago, give or take, he stumbles on the chance to make kind of a long-running TV series about Jesus, and it's called The Chosen.
Yes.
So Dallas Jenkins is the director of The Chosen.
Yes.
And
very popular.
And now the interesting thing, a couple things have happened. So Left Behind is like a subcultural product sold to a subcultural audience. The Chosen starts out funded by Christians, but ends up being picked up by major distribution, right? Because there's so much money in this now. And it's a weird hybrid because it's still mostly watched by Christians, but Dallas has learned things about making movies, really. It's done at a pretty high level. So, so I would define art as a material response to the transcendent. And I would define great art as material response to the transcendent that produces further responses. So Da Vinci's Last Supper, that kind of painting you probably have a picture of, is itself a material response to the transcendent. But it's such significant art that other people, you probably remember partly because other people have done things with that same image, right? It produces more responses. Is The Chosen great art? Only time will tell. Time will tell if other artists watch it and think, I want to make a response to this. I suspect it may not quite rise to that, but is it art? It is very serious art. It's artfully done. It is not just a Sunday school telling of the story. It takes big risks artistically. It's done with a level of just technical excellence. And it's converging in a way with the level of quality you expect from anything you watch on Netflix or Amazon or whatever. Like it is of equal, if not greater merit than maybe the median, Netflix produced show.
Totally.
And yet it hasn't quite achieved escape velocity to be part of the kind of mainstream cultural conversation, because in the end, it's very Jesus-y. And the broader culture would really like a lot of spirituality, but is not sure what to do with this extremely particular story about this guy named Jesus.
Right.
I don't know if that quite answers your question.
No, it absolutely does.
Like
I think it does. I think in a
story.
way I hear you saying, the project continues. It's changed shape. And Christians have achieved things that could even legitimately be a kind of form of art that who knows, time will tell. And so maybe some of the bad Christian music maybe I had to endure as a teen, Christians have done different things now.
Yes.
And are out there
and I would say, I mean, there's been serious art made by people in this evangelical stream all along. The advantage it has, by the way, is that it maintained enough distinctiveness in the culture that continues to have things to say that are not just what the culture is saying. The problem with the progressive wing of Protestantism is it actually ends up being so intertwined with the culture that it ends up actually not having anything to say that the culture itself is not already saying, or the broader culture is not
That's
saying.
clearly the challenge, yes.
And there are people in that stream who, of course, believe that Jesus is the center of their lives, but they have a hard time figuring out what culture to create that wouldn't be different from the mainstream. Right. Whereas the evangelicals keep finding things that are sort of, run cross currents to the stories that the mainstream wants to tell. And so interesting things keep happening. I will say the other thing that happens is that the artists both have more chances now, but it is also true that there's like, the industry just keeps cranking up, and this is clearest in music. Christian music actually used to cover a certain range of subjects in the CCM days, contemporary Christian music. And then it all just gets subsumed into worship music.
Praise and worship, that's what it is.
Praise and worship is what Christian music is now.
There are about 10 lyrics that you can do.
Right.
Not many more, 12 lyrics.
Exactly. But and that's a commercial juggernaut, making more millions of dollars for people than probably has ever been made in history by Christian culture makers, is being made specifically in the praise and worship industry, which is a complicated thing to ponder. That if you're a Christian, and one of the best ways to become a millionaire right now, if you have artistic talent, is write a praise and worship song.
That is astounding, actually.
What do we make of that? At the same time,
I don't even want to say.
There's incredible artistic creativity. We're recording on a day actually when one of these sets of musicians are going to be playing tonight here at George Fox. Yeah. Who are doing truly just as artistically innovative and exploratory stuff as any, band in another so-called genre.
The Brilliance.
And the Brilliance is doing this. They're the ones playing tonight. There's so many others. So the story has only gotten more complicated. The money in some sectors has gotten way more than it was even 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality, I would say, has gone up across the board of like, how prepared are these folks to make something that makes meaning?
Yeah.
Because really the challenge in culture is what you're making deep or shallow. Is it got a lot of capacity to hold meaning the greatest art has almost infinite depth of capacity? Or does it only carry a message? Like a message, like a text message is so many bits. It tells you that, we need milk from the grocery store, but it doesn't necessarily respond to the transcendent. And I would say that Christians, among other things today, are making also in food and restaurants and so forth, hospitality, are making deeper culture than we were in 2008 for sure.
Yeah. This is great. I wonder if you'd be game to play a little game that I'm calling. I actually don't have a name for the game. I love the questions you had in your book. There's so much we could talk about here, and obviously our time is limited, but I love the 5 questions that you had. This is actually near the beginning of the book, but these 5 questions that we could ask of any cultural artifact, anything that we make in that double sense. What does this assume about the way the world is? What does this assume about the way the world should be? What does this make possible? What does this make impossible or difficult? And 5, what new forms of culture emerge because of this artifact? I wonder if the game here is, I want to bring up some things that have emerged or become more popular since 2008.
Great. Love it.
Since you wrote the book.
Yeah.
And I want you, and we got to do this a little bit of a lightning round, okay? So it's a little bit lightning round. So get in your lightning round mode, okay? And I want you, particularly, I got to make this easier for you and say, particularly this question, I was really intrigued by your question. What does this make impossible or difficult?
Yes.
I love that question.
Yes.
I love that question. What does this make impossible or difficult?
Yeah.
So if you just focused on that one,
okay.
Are we ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
I think texting is a lot more popular now than it was, doesn't it? What does texting make impossible or difficult?
Silence makes it harder. So media doesn't allow for silence. So if you and I are together and we are not recording a podcast, there will come a point of conversation, and certainly in a relationship, if we were to know each other deeply and well, where actually there are moments where we don't say anything and it's okay. Because I'm with you. And especially moments of deep emotion or moments of great perplexity or great conflict. And after the conflict, before the resolution, comes silence. Not allowed in media, not allowed on radio, not allowed on podcast or video. Like, we have to keep talking right now. If we try to be silent, it's just absence.
It's like we're keeping ourselves alive by talking. If we stop talking, we'll die.
Exactly.
Right here in this moment.
Certainly your viewership and listenership will die.
Yeah.
So texting, same thing. You have to have a response. You send the text. It's like, why aren't they answering? Why aren't they answering? So it makes very difficult, and therefore, slowness. Like, how do I respond to a tough question? First of all, I do not think you should send tough questions on text, but people do all the time, especially younger people this is their primary channel.
I do this sometimes. Get a little too deep on text. You're saying don't do it?
I'm saying use it for groceries.
Okay.
I would not use it for anything more than the logistical.
You know who does what you're saying? My wife. I need to be like her in this regard. She would never do that over text.
Good.
But I do.
So, but should a message like that come over, there's no time to slow down and have that, the basic thing that makes us human is the synaptic gap between stimulus and response. Between stimulus and response is a choice. But if you close that gap and collapse that gap, then all you're doing is reacting, not responding.
I feel like making a spiritual commitment right now. I'm not going to do that anymore over text. Well, I believe it. I believe I should do that. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to move on. That's my transition.
Texting, good.
AirPods.
More difficult, making... negotiating a way to be convivial with strangers. So we encounter strangers. Sometimes we're right next to them on the bus, in the airplane, but actually at a university, in the dining hall, people we don't know well or don't know at all. And there are ways that cultures find to handle the awkwardness that I'm quite close to you and maybe stuck with you for a little bit of time, but we don't know each other. Sometimes it's small talk. There's a bunch of different things. Sometimes just a nod. It's an acknowledgement. You're another person, and we're going to each do our own thing, but we're here together. The AirPods signal visibly, I'm not dialed into you.
Not available.
I'm not available. And they solve the problem. What it makes possible is feeling extremely comfortable in public settings where you don't know anyone, not interacting, and feeling like you're okay because you've got a parallel thing going on in your head.
Sure.
Maybe a podcast.
Right.
I think my impression is the younger a person is, the more likely it is they're not listening to music. They're listening to a podcast on their earbuds. I think a lot of older people assume they're listening to music.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I think so.
But in any case, you've got an alternative world, and that means it makes it easier to not be worried about the fact that you're with other people and don't know them. But it also means no one learns how to do this thing where you're with another person and you have to figure out how to be convivial, by which I mean we're living in the same space, and how do we make it hospitable to be together? Yeah. And instead, there's this kind of deathly silence in public places that says, "Don't you dare try to interact. Don't you dare expect anyone will notice you." I got on a plane on my way here at 9 in the morning. It was not an early morning flight. Mm-hmm. I was the last person on because it was a connection. And I was barely made it. And I got on the plane 9 a.m. and it was like the most deathly silent environment. Everyone has their earbuds in, and you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be very quiet now." You feel like you need to shrink. You don't feel the option to greet your seatmate, even though you're going to sit next to this person for hours. Yeah. And I know
your life could depend on that person, depending on what happens during that flight.
Yes, exit row or whatever.
Get to know each other real fast with the AirPods out when we're doing whatever. I don't know what happens.
Hey, right? I think most people will ride them to the ground, baby.
Yeah, that's
I'm going
right.
down, just
right about that.
crank up the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So what becomes truly almost impossible is the idea that we can be with strangers in a public space and be for each other, which just feeds the sense that we're not for each other and we're actually a threat to each other. Stranger danger. Yeah. And how do I handle stranger danger? I've got my AirPods. Yeah. And therefore, it actually, the stranger becomes more dangerous because there is no way.
That's fascinating.
There's also no way to know, am I next to a psychopath or a person who actually could be a great friend? Because back in the days when we did these negotiations of kind of shared conviviality, you would sense if someone was a little off, you would find out in the way they talk to you. You'd be like, I think I maybe need to move or whatever. Right. Now everybody's got their AirPods in.
Yeah. Better not to know, we've said. Okay, I can't, because we're out of time here.
Oh gosh,
I can't possibly launch this last one I wanted to launch at you. I wonder if I could just offer a brief thought and you match me with a brief thought. Okay. And then I have one more question for you very quickly, but we got to do super lightning round. I love that you use the idea. I love, and this is not something that has emerged since 2008, but I love your example of the interstate highway that you brought up in the book. I've thought a lot about cars, and I think it's because, and yes, this is the thing I'm bringing up, AI. I thought a lot about cars, just thinking, okay, there's a certain kind of panic we have around AI. I think a lot of it is legitimate. We have to act. And then some of it, I don't know that it's being very thoughtful. But I think cars, the interstate, think what that has made possible or impossible. It's made it impossible to listen to your local preacher say his dumb sermons. I'm going to drive past you, and I'm going to, or even what
down the road.
Even what podcasts make possible, right? In terms of where I get my knowledge. It's not local knowledge. It's not the knowledge of my father. It's the knowledge of this substitute voice of wisdom that I can get anywhere. And I wondered, I guess I don't feel fair that I can just ask you to talk about AI because we're in the lightning round. We're over time, but
lightning.
How different do you think AI is going to be in terms of what now it makes impossible versus something like the car or the interstate? I mean, we haven't even maybe reckoned with that as a society. And now we've got this new thing dumped on us. So I'm like, hey, I know AI, it's great. Companies are spending $1 trillion on it, making almost no money. Maybe there'll be a bubble. Maybe it will crash. We haven't even dealt with the fact that cars have fundamentally changed our lives. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
Completely fair. And the great question about AI that we will not resolve until I come back on this podcast years from now.
Which I hope is soon.
Or my AI avatar returns. is this as significant as the internet, which is less significant than cars, by the way. The internet was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
But where you live in the world, where you go to church, where your business is, what your house is like,
yes.
a 1,000 things have not been shaped by the internet, but was shaped by cars in your daily life, in all of our daily lives. So the internet is actually less significant than cars. AI may be that. If I have to bet, it's that. Or it could be electricity, which is more significant than cars. Cars were downstream in a way from the electrification of America. And then it's a really, really big social change. And then there is the possibility that it's agriculture, the original culture, the absolute transformation in how we worked the world and got good from the world. It could be, I give it a 5% chance, that AI is going to be that big.
Wow.
That is the first big culture change in human history, is when we stopped being hunter-gatherers and we started
9,000 years
seeds.
ago.
Right. That's right. So our grandchildren will know. We probably, if it kind of peters out, we'll know pretty quick. But if it really takes off,
Yeah.
if it really takes off, it'll be 1,000 years before a new human society has emerged that has reconfigured in order to preserve human flourishing with this vast new capability, which is what it took with agriculture also.
Wow.
So we'll see.
You've whet the appetite here for thinking about AI, which I know we all are. Final question. What gives you hope these days?
Oh, people. I mean, the people I'm closest to, my own children who are young adults, my granddaughter who was just born. She's not doing very much to give me hope, but just her existence in the world is
Congratulations,
notable.
by the way, to you and your wife.
No, it's the people I'm closest to who are pursuing truth and truthfulness. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote to his sister shortly before he was executed, "Only the truth and truthfulness will save us." And I'm so grateful. Most of my days are spent with people I can truly say are pursuing truth and truthfulness. And that is all it takes in the world for good to be done. Wow. So I get to be with those people a lot of the time, and they call me back to be that kind of person when I'm not. And that's the source of hope for me.
Andy, this has been so fun. My mind is on fire. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.